The Navigating Disability podcast often discusses topics including disability, injury, mental health, and mentions of sensitive issues such as trauma and suicide. Listener discretion is advised. Please take care while listening. Welcome to the Navigating Disability podcast. Today we're joined by Jonathan Sigworth, an advocate for spinal cord injuries, independence, and adaptive sports. After becoming paralysed at 19, Jonathan found hope through peer mentorship, leading him to start India's first wheelchair rugby team and direct the award-winning documentary More Than Walking. In 2017, he and his wife Jessica co-founded More Than Walking, a non-profit supporting SCI independence through online videos and a global peer mentoring community. With support from Craig Nielsen Foundation, they're developing a comprehensive patient education course on bed mobility and transfer skills. Join us as we explore Jonathan's journey and his work empowering the SCI community. Welcome, Jonathan.
Hey, thank you, Kate. Lovely being here.
We're so excited to have you all the way from the US. Tell me a little bit about your journey. It seems to me that the age 19 was quite pivotal for you. You've had what we would consider a normal upbringing to a catastrophic event to the second part of your life. Tell me about that time.
Yeah, well, I mean, 19 was interesting, right? It was I just graduated high school. I had been accepted to university and took a gap year before heading there. Wanted to learn a little bit more about the world outside my own cultural bubble. Decided to study world history and world religions for a year. Found myself in India with some other students for a semester, and 2 weeks into that trip, I decided to be late to class, which was a normal thing for me, and rode a friend's bicycle instead of walking on a narrow, windy footpath in the foothills of the Himalayas. And it worked on day one. It did not work on day two, and I found myself at the bottom of a 70-foot cliff, unconscious behind a shed, bleeding out next to the only hospital on the mountain. And that's how I survived. And from there, I had my surgery in Delhi, and I met my first friends in the disabled community um, by my bedside who held my hand. And we didn't speak the same language, we didn't share the same religion, didn't share the same nationality, and yet they were there supporting me. And what we had in common was our paralysis. And I knew at that moment that I had fallen into a really special, unique, beautiful community that I was really excited to learn more about. I was excited to learn wheelies. Um, I did extreme unicycling before my injury. That's why I was so kind of maybe cocky of riding a bicycle on a narrow, winding footpath, running late to class. But really came in handy for rehab, and I just kind of dove into it, dove into the process, learned as much as I could, and uh, from there I went on back to college and tried to stay involved with the community that I had been introduced to in India. So yeah, I mean to answer your question, like you go from the cusp of independence at 19 to back, a taste of independence, and then you're back to day one, someone changing your diapers, someone doing the bathroom stuff for you, bathing, dressing, you have to start it all over. So it's an experience.
So where were your family at that time? Were they back in the US?
Yeah, my I grew up in Connecticut. I should have started there.
Oh, that's okay.
Grew up in Connecticut, Hamden, Connecticut. And my parents are there. My dad was a professor at Yale. Um, my mom is a great community advocate. Um, both of my brother, I have two older brothers, and I'm the youngest. And it was funny. Every other member of my family had gone through some life threatening, whether it's medical, mental health, kind of event. And I was the only one who nothing had happened to yet. But having witnessed and having been there with my family members, um, I kind of knew the drill. And in terms of, how do you process this? And we were a very religious family, and so that also played a big role in helping navigating and, you know, knowing my value as a human being did not change as a result of my disability was at the core of kind of my belief and my experience from the beginning.
And do you think that's because of what your family had been through previously?
Absolutely. And seeing without a doubt how these terrible, catastrophic, like the worst things you can imagine things have create opportunities for real change and create opportunities to really meet people you never thought you would meet, draw closer as a family, draw closer as a community, opportunities to grow. And so I knew that that's what was happening. I was like, oh, great.
So do you think that prepared you for your catastrophic event in some way?
Oh, yes, without a doubt. As I said, I knew what was happening. I didn't like what was happening. Um, but I knew there was an opportunity here and I had a choice to make. And I haven't always made the correct choice, but for the most part, I would say I've consistently chosen to take hold of that opportunity and see where it leads.
That's a pretty mature outlook to have when you've suffered a catastrophic event. Can I take you back to that time and your parents were still in the USA? It couldn't have all been rosy. Like you're lying in the hospital, you've got no family, you've got no one there. How did you get through that time?
Yeah, no, it was not rosy at all. And anyone who says that it is and that they never dealt with depression is lying through their teeth. Um, no, I mean, is the nights that I was in the hospital for 2.5 months alone, um, when everyone left and I was there, I cried, it was really hard to let go of my ability now being paralyzed below my arms and in my hands. You know, um, I have my wheelchair here. You can't see it really well, but the I had just learned how to play guitar. Like I had struggled with musical instruments all my life. I not struggled, but I used to play drums and that kind of, and then I was playing trumpet in the jazz band, and then I got braces, so you know how that went. Um, these are small things, but like 19, just learned how to play guitar, and my first girlfriend, and then this happens, and you know, you have to mourn things like that, when you see your life going in one direction and all of a sudden something happens and you can't go in that direction, at least not the way that you thought you could in the same way. Um, and that's not to say that, you can't achieve what you were planning on achieving in the beginning anyway. You absolutely can. Um, but you have to give time, and I had to give time for myself to kind of sit with that and I don't know, let myself feel what was being lost, and that took time. And like for me, the biggest issues was the social isolation, that really got real, especially when I went back to college and dealing with chronic depression. um, being the only wheelchair user on campus, and
Was that in
you
India or was that in the States?
oh, no, that was back in the States. So
Yep.
yeah, I went back to India year after year, after my injury, in order to do new projects, like start a wheelchair rugby team and make a film. But all the while, um, I was back at Wesleyan and then at Dartmouth University, being the only wheelchair user on campus. And, in India, you're doing, I was working on these really cool projects, right? and teaching what I had learned. And whenever you go out into the street, like, people stare at you because they don't see wheelchair users out in public uh, that often at all. And you feel like you're making a difference just by existing in the world. But back in the States on the college campus, you roll down the hallway, no one looks at you. You roll down the campus street, no one, like,
You're just normal.
you're, well, not just
And I
you're
hate using
normal.
that word.
No, right, but it's more of like an ignoring. Uh, in terms of like socially, like, you don't stand out, but then no one wants to touch you because of liability. Like, you can't get carried up onto a bus the way I can ask in India. Oh, they don't have lifts on buses, but I can, you know, the society is such that I could grab a stranger and ask them, Mirabai, can you help me get me up on this thing? And they'll grab four of their friends and bring me up there. And, it's just a different situation. But yeah, so there it's definitely a hard thing, and the social isolation, even surrounded by people, you feel socially isolated sometimes. Um, and overcoming that depression was the hardest part.
Was there ever a time when you didn't want to continue?
There was a time that I sympathized with the idea of not continuing.
And how did you get yourself out of that?
It was there's um it was a night when I was up at Dartmouth, and I don't know what brought it on, but I ended up just calling a friend. I was before that I had rolled out into the parking lot and just saw how if I just let go of my wheels, my wheelchair would just roll down the parking lot and into the woods and down the gully. And I wouldn't have called myself suicidal, but I was like, wow, I can really relate to someone who would feel that way. Maybe I was. But what I ended up doing was thinking, well, how would I talk to someone who is feeling this way? You know, would I say, yeah, you person who's feeling sad and socially isolated, your life is worthless? Like, is that what I would tell someone else? And the answer to that was no. And so why am I voicing those same thoughts to me? And I reached out to a friend and had them come by. And you just have to latch on to people um and ask for help. It's one of the hardest things to do, but I think the other key part of that is realize, like, you really are not alone. And what I mean by that is what we say to each other, we would rarely ever say to anyone else. And I think putting it into that third person perspective is really helpful in understanding just how sometimes unfair we can treat ourselves, how
We are our
unfairly we treat ourselves.
hardest
Yeah.
critics. Yeah, and as you said,
Yeah.
would you say to someone else what you say to yourself? Absolutely not.
Yeah.
So hard.
And I think the other way of getting out of that was um getting involved. Like, getting throwing yourself into the action. I mean, I must say, once I graduated and kind of just started working full time on these issues that I cared deeply about, things just became so much easier, so throw yourself into advocacy, throw yourself into whatever it is, wheelchair sports, whatever, pursue your dream, whatever that is. Um,
And it's okay for
and
for dreams to change. Like you probably
yeah,
didn't have that dream until you were in this situation. Then all of a sudden your whole world opened up to another possibility.
no, absolutely. I mean, I didn't really know what I was going to do at when I got injured. I knew I wanted to do something with film and was interested in documentary film because of the ability of film to really change people's perceptions of things. You sit down to watch a movie and you're kind of captive for an hour and a half to be put in someone else's shoes. And that's why I was interested in film. And so I wanted to run with that somehow. And I think that is what led me to creating the documentary, which tells the stories of my story and the stories of several of my friends who I met in India, called More Than Walking, which then led to the name of our nonprofit, which then led to, hey, we can share the stories and independent living skills of people living with SCI, which is what we've been doing ever since. We have a video library now. And we're trying to make this video course which would help teach those basic rehabilitation skills so that anyone in the world who has a spinal cord injury can finally see, wow, okay, based on my level of paralysis, this is how I get up out of bed. This is how I transfer into my wheelchair. Without those skills, you can't do anything else. Um,
You're quite
and
stuck.
yeah, you're stuck in your bed, and people, in the US, we have a very complex health system that's very costly
To put it
also, but we
mildly,
have we have specialized rehab centers, and I was able to benefit from one. In India, there were like two in the whole country, and I was able to be treated at one initially.
can I
But
ask?
the vast
Sorry, Jonathan. Can I ask? You seem to have a very sweet affection for India. Where did that come from?
um well, I had, as I mentioned, two older brothers who had both been to India before me, and so I was interested in kind of learning more about it. Um, and the program I was involved in just happened to have the second semester in India where we would visit Buddhist temples, Hindu temples, mosques, and learning about the diverse history of religion and culture there. I mean, and I guess I would say that's one of the unique strengths that India has, similar to the US, where, I mean, in many places where you just have diverse cultures all living together. Um, and it was a nice, it was a wonderful place to kind of interact with that. Um,
Was this your first
and
trip to India when this occurred?
oh yeah, yeah, it was my first trip, and then um, it was incredible. Like, what my sweet affection, I would say, is because of my accident. Like, I don't know if my path would have led me to go back there if it hadn't been for my accident.
And that's really
I
amazing because some people would probably never want to see that place again.
No, the first time I went back to Missouri. I went back to the hill station where I was injured. Um, and and met my friends there and met my friends in Delhi, and I kept going back there every single year until the year I graduated and moved there to start a transitional living program for quads in Paris. So, which is still running until this day. So, through the Indian Head Injury Foundation and the eSkip Trust. So, it's an amazing place. All our countries have problems and needing improvement, but there was an energy there, um, where you just make do and you make it work. And that's the challenge we had.
Really is the
Eh,
simple life, going back to the simple roots of what's important.
yeah, and I guess the question I had coming back from India because it really was night and day, right? Like as an American, I was coming back to college, to an accessible university. Like my university didn't kick me out once they found I had a disability. I had resources. My family had resources. I had insurance. The friends I met in India, families were disowning them. They were being isolated for years. People do not go to rehab. People do not have health insurance
They don't have
if
the
you have a
means to
disability.
go to
No, you
rehab.
have to, so it's night and day the disparity of access to healthcare. And so that's what I think really drove home like, oh my gosh, my focus is I have a focus. I know what I need to do, but how do I do it? How does a 19-year-old who's not yet graduated from college, who doesn't have a degree, like what difference can I make? And being involved in wheelchair rugby so early on, I joined the Connecticut Jammers 6 months after my injury, which was based out of my rehab hospital. Uh, Smashing into other wheelchair users on a basketball court is the funnest thing in the world. And wheelchair rugby, also known as murder ball. And when went back to India the first time, to get some cheap therapy, honestly. I ended up volunteering most of the time, showing the skills I had learned. And I was like, how do we change the perception of what life could be like in a wheelchair and in a place where there are so many different challenges, like systemic challenges. And I was like, we have to introduce wheelchair rugby. We have to change the perception. We have to change the expectations so that that expectation shift starts in rehab. Like I want to be able to do that. That's my goal. I want to be able to smash into someone else and flip their wheelchair over on a court and like get paid to do that. Like that's what I want to do. That's not what I wanted to do. I didn't want to be one of those mean people. Um, but you know, so when we introduced it, now there's an Indian Wheelchair Rugby Federation run by my friend Nikhil. Um, and it worked. It took several years for that to happen. But you introduce an idea, someone else catches it, and it goes.
You must be so
And
proud of what you've achieved. And
I'm
not
so
just for
proud of
you, for everyone else.
I am so proud of what my friends have achieved
Yeah.
with what little I could do. And I think that just goes back to the point like, look, if you're new to disability, if you're new to any, spinal cord injury, what have you, you never know what people you're going to meet, what impact you can have on their lives. I met my wife, Jessica, because I did a bed mobility demonstration um, two or 3 years after my injury when I was making the documentary in India. Um, and my dad put the video up on YouTube. I didn't even have a YouTube channel, but it was there for years and years and years and years and years and years. My wife is from Colombia, South America, and she was looking for demonstration videos for a quadriplegic patient of hers. And after like hours of searching on the internet, she came across my video, which apparently was pretty good. And her patient didn't believe that I was a real quadriplegic. He thought I was an actor or something like that. And so was trying to find excuses like not to do what his therapist was telling him to do. And so she reached out to me on Facebook to confirm and ask some follow-up questions. And that's how we met. I was in
That's
India, she was in Colombia.
amazing.
Some bed mobility video I put on the internet, my dad put on the internet years before. So it's just, you have to just lend yourself to the opportunities in front of you, and you never know what's going to come out of it.
I want to take you back to that time when you had the accident. Who were your biggest supports? Who helped you get through that life-changing experience?
I mean, my parents, my brothers, my friends. Um, I mean, I can't say enough about the hell I put my mom and dad through. Um, but I would just say my family, first and foremost, and the whole community. It's just so important to not be afraid to interact with a member of your community when they go through something like this, and to just keep interacting with them normally. Like visit them in the hospital, hang out, ask questions. Um, it's so key. But but also, I mean, I didn't see half of the inner workings of the support that my mom did, but um, I'm sure there are so many people giving meals and lending support in different ways
It
that
really
I
does
didn't
take a
see.
village, doesn't it?
It really does take a village, and I and also just like with the insurance, like I was stupid when before traveling to India. I went saw a doctor, got my vaccinations and whatnot. They handed me some pamphlet, probably advertising travel insurance. I understood it to mean that I did have travel insurance. And so when I went to India, I did not have travel insurance. But my mom was able to argue that they led me to believe I had travel insurance, and therefore they covered my medevac eventually. Um,
Good on her.
Good on her. But I mean, this just kind of points to the systems around us make such a big difference.
Yeah.
And you know, today I've gotten much more involved in disability advocacy at the local and national levels relates to wheelchair repairs and and I don't know if you've heard, but in the US, we when it comes to saving money in the government, the first thing to be attacked is usually health insurance for the poor and for people with disabilities.
Yep.
um, so we're at the forefront of that, but like these systems, which all of us can have a say in if we choose to. Without those, we literally cannot survive.
Yep.
And yeah, so
It's not a matter of it's a nice to have. It's a matter of you need this to survive, to live every day.
you need this to survive it, right? And any family who has a newly injured person in their orbit, or any individual, when you're going through this, like I didn't keep track of what insurance I was on, or what the insurance policies are. But those things, if they are not seamless systems, they just create so many barriers to getting back to life if they don't work well. Um, so if you're looking for something to do, something that can bring meaning to your life or redirect purpose, if you're, in this, you're like, what do I do now? Well, we have a war that we need to win in order to survive, like all of us, and we need you. Like we need warriors, man. We need politicians, we need lawmakers, we need advocates, we need people who are looking to fight tooth and nail, not just to support people with disabilities, but really all of us. Healthcare is a right, and it's a system that without which none of us can live. So that's kind of what I'm waking up to as an advocate, here. But that is a big part. Like when I got injured, uh, shortly after, the laws changed so that I could finally be on private health insurance with a pre-existing condition.
Yeah.
So I really benefited from some of those things. So there's the individuals who really stepped in, but the system changed in a timely manner for me as well.
Yeah. I've got so many questions I want to ask you, and I'm sort of jumping around. I want to ask you about people that, like me, 10 years ago, had no experience with disability. What would you like them to know about interacting with a person with a disability? So if I saw you in the street, and probably in the past, I would have avoided, walked around, not want to make a big deal out of it, and been quite judgmental. I know now that that's absolutely not, you're just a human being that wants connection and wants to talk, and there's nothing wrong with you. What would you say to people from someone who is disabled and who does want does live that life every day?
I mean, I would say the same thing. Like,
I think I
uh,
answered my own question, but
just
I'd love to hear it from you.
whatever reaction you would have that would be socially awkward for someone else who's walking by you would be socially awkward for a wheelchair user who's rolling by you. Like, um, I mean, I guess, yeah, don't avoid eye contact. Make eye contact, say hello. Don't make prolonged eye contact. Don't stare. Um, you know, don't worry if your kid starts asking questions. Let them ask questions. Uh, it's totally fine. Um, people with disabilities recognize that uh, curiosity is natural, and at least I am personally very used to answering questions and don't mind. Um, but yeah, I mean, I guess another interaction is if you think someone needs help, maybe that's in a different context, but often when I go to like the grocery store and I'm um or somewhere else and I'm disassembling my wheelchair of my car, putting it back in, someone will say, "Oh, do you need help?" And there's kind of two like what is it? Camps of thought. One is like F off, like I don't uh but I am of the party that welcomes that interaction because sometimes I do need help. Most of the time I don't. And so I say, look, if you see someone who thinks that who looks as if they may need help, feel free to ask. Don't be offended if they say no. Be understanding if they say F off, because as you might imagine, if you appear you need help all the time and you really don't, it gets annoying. But
The other thing I've learned through these podcasts and speaking to people in chairs is that the chair really is an extension of you, and we shouldn't touch that chair without you giving your approval. Would you agree with that?
oh, absolutely. Yes.
Yeah.
Absolutely. Yeah. I mean, and especially do not push someone in a wheelchair without asking permission.
Yeah, because you've got it all under control. What would you say to someone, or what would you say to society? What changes do you want to see in society moving forward?
Oh, well, um, I guess we're talking about global society here.
Yeah, let's talk about global.
All right, so here's my wish list. You know, uh, there's a lot of really cool cutting edge research coming out for spinal cord injury, for implants in the brain, to help with higher levels of injury, navigating stuff with computers, and there's all this really great stuff. I want to see a world where all that stuff continues, and yet we're still able to get basic, really good, awesome wheelchairs to sub-Saharan Africa, to places where specialized rehab doesn't exist. We find ways of getting that basic knowledge into people's hands no matter where they are. We have the tools that we need to get that done. Um, but we need governments and we need businesses built around that goal. Um, so that's change number one. I want to see everyone living with a disability with a spinal cord injury having access to those basic tools, um, and a concerted effort to get that done. That's kind of the basis for our strategy of using online videos to share that information, to share those skills.
And
Um,
Jonathan, just excuse my ignorance. Are you saying that there are people out there with spinal cord injuries that don't have access to wheelchairs or to assistive technology that they need?
oh, absolutely. I mean, I would go as far as to say that still the majority of people don't have access to those things.
And are you saying, is that more so in worldwide or is that more in third world countries?
I mean, yeah, that is I mean, third world countries, I would argue would be worldwide, and that even countries like the United States or Australia, um, you know, I mean, at least in the US, maybe you guys have a better healthcare system, I believe, than we do.
Sometimes.
But in the US, just one example, a guy in New Jersey, he spent his life um, teaching accessible transportation, with a state university, and for more than 30 years. He got paralyzed in a car accident, went to one of the best rehab hospitals in the country. His home was not accessible, so he got sent to a nursing home. And the business that ran the nursing home and that ran the state Medicaid program, which is very complex, the private equity owned business that ran his care refused to provide him a wheelchair for 3 years because he was in a nursing home and technically had all the care that he needed. So why would they shell out, $40,000 for an independent electric mobility device? And so they basically said, we won't pay for that until you move out, but he can't move out into the community without that wheelchair. Um, Not to mention there's not housing. Anyway, just one example of how big, powerful, wealthy interests are really getting in the way of access to basic things, even in first world countries. Like these are the systems that we have that are cutting edge and they're holding us back. And they're also the systems that are not prioritizing getting those basic wheelchairs out to people in Kenya, people in Nigeria, who I'm in communication with on a regular basis, who, they're dying of bed sores. Like,
I'm actually shocked and I feel quite ignorant that I had no idea to the extent. So if I don't, and I'm in the disability industry, how does everyday people know that that's going on? That's disgusting.
yeah. And I mean, there's so much work at so many levels that needs to be done, but so that is number one, is like, can we as like a world get to a point where that becomes a priority for people with disabilities? Um, and then the second thing, and maybe this is kind of tied into it, the whole idea of universal healthcare being a system that everyone pays into and that everyone has a right to healthcare. Um, that is still a foreign concept in the US, that we're actively fighting for. Um, Congrats to what extent you guys have that in Australia. I know it's not a perfect system, but um,
Certainly are ahead of the US when it comes to that.
yes. And then I guess the third part to it, I'm sure there's other parts that I'm forgetting, but it goes back to film and the public perception of people with disabilities in film and in culture. And I think we're making progress. But man, I want to see a John Wick movie with a paraplegic, jumping down buildings and shooting at bad guys and flying helicopters. I want to see our imagination of life with disability um, expand and to really encapsulate like we are not just a the backstory of a villain, or we're not just the backstory of a tragic hero. Um, that we can play a very active central role in stories that move people beyond our own community, you know? Um, and I think that's the same aspiration for any minority group, really. And but for us, we are the largest minority group. We are the largest, most diverse minority group on this planet. Like there's a lot of power in that. And I feel like we have yet to really tap into that power to mobilize each other and our neighbors for the drastic systemic changes that we need.
Yeah. What does the future hold for Jonathan Sigworth?
I don't know.
One day at a time?
One day at a time. We're I don't know. I'm working on getting this video course done in the next couple of years. Um, we're growing a partnership with More Than Walking and spinalpedia.com, which is a great resource for finding uh, videos and demonstrations for everything related to spinal cord injury. And we're doing peer mentoring for people in the US navigating benefits and the insane healthcare system that we have, um, and path to employment. So that's something that's really cool. We're trying to get involved in different rehab hospitals in the US as well, through that connection. Um, but I mean, what I would love to see is, uh, systems like these, resources like these be available to anyone everywhere, no matter what language, religion, region, government you're under. Um, it's a right to be able to access your own community and to be able to get access to health and the expert knowledge that you need to live independently with a disability. So somewhere somewhere along those lines, you'll find me.
What can the community do to support you worldwide?
Well, worldwide people can go to morethanwalking.com and donate. You can also follow our podcast, Super Adaptables, wherever you listen to podcasts. Search for Super Adaptables or More Than Walking, where we're talking about our kind of vision of universal healthcare and the different challenges uniquely that we're facing in the US at this pivotal moment as we struggle to educate the public and also help fight and preserve the social safety net programs we have and expand them. Um, and yeah, and follow us on YouTube, where we also publish our podcasts, and we will be publishing our videos for that video course later this year.
Jonathan, it's been absolutely amazing speaking to you. Thank you so much for your raw, open, and honest view on the world. I do look forward to, I would love to work with you moving forward. So let's keep talking and see if we can change this world one conversation at a time.
Absolutely, Kate. Thank you so much. It's been an honor talking with you as well. And hey, we'll get it all done.
We just keep going. Thanks,
Just
Jonathan.
keep going.